This episode of Mark Bell's Power Project podcast is brought to you by Piedmontese beef. And I really want to talk about Piedmontese beef because, in my opinion, it is the most underrated, most untalked about, just underutilized tools when it comes to bodybuilders and their diets. Can you explain exactly why that is, Nsima?
Yeah, man, it's actually pretty awesome because we have a lot of bodybuilders on this podcast, and every single time we get one on, we always tell them about Piedmontese because when a bodybuilder goes on a bodybuilding diet, they're like, I want to eat low fat and, I can't eat a lot of calories. And they always end up eating chicken breast, tilapia, just really weak meats, just very weak birds. But Piedmontese is awesome because they have a lot of different options in terms of their meat that have a great amount of protein, like good amounts of protein, but not a crazy amount of fat. So you can be trying to do a diet and you can eat a lot of meat, a lot of red meat that tastes great, that's tender, without all of the extra calories. But I want to give this a big but because a lot of people are like, but I like fat. They also have a lot of options of different cuts of meat that have more amounts of fat. So if that's your jam and that's what you want to do, you have that option too. You can't lose.
I like that you added a big but. We love big butts.
We do.
Cannot lie. But seriously, stop eating weak birds, like Nsima just said. Head over to Piedmontese.com. That's Piedmontese.com. At checkout, enter promo code Power Project for 25% off your order. And if your order is $99 or more, you get free 2-day shipping. Highly, highly, highly recommend you check out the flat iron steak because what Nsima just said, it's ridiculously high in protein and insanely low in fat. Go check that out right now.
What up, Power Project crew? This is Josh Settlage, aka Settlegate, here to introduce you to our next guest, Danny Dreyer. Danny Dixxon Flannel Dreyer is the founder and CEO of Dixxon Flannel. He is also the host of the $180 and a Dream podcast and a father of 2 boys. His company, Dixxon Flannel, is an apparel company that Danny started in an attempt to make a couple extra $100 a month while meeting his need of high-quality, durable flannels that look fresh far beyond their first wash. What started as a way for Danny to make a little extra cash while he worked in his father's motorcycle shop has now turned into a multi-million-dollar brand that has thousands of fans from the lowrider and biker scene chomping at the bit for each new apparel drop every month. His podcast, $180 and a Dream, reflects on his own journey, how he started originally loading up his trunk and traveling across California, selling his new custom-branded flannels at lowrider get-togethers and biker meetups. Danny was able to take Dixxon Flannels from doing 25 orders a day out of his own house to doing thousands of orders every day, all operating out of their headquarters in Tempe, Arizona. Dixxon Flannels are now recognized as a limited and specialty item, which tend to auction off on eBay for resale at over $100 per flannel. Danny has also been involved in custom designing his own boats with the #1 luxury high-performance boat manufacturer in the country, Eliminator Boats. But you guys probably don't want to hear about that because that is a different story. Please enjoy this conversation with Danny Dreyer.
I'm guessing it was massive, or was it just dirty?
It was fucking massive. I don't know if I've ever shit like that in my life.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I gotta see this.
I was like sick. What's wrong?
Let's go.
You're recording now?
Yep.
So we're gonna have some poop stories today. I hope our guests have some poop stories too, because this will be nice. This will be real nice.
He's been hitting up some exercising and he's lost some weight too, I think.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Here we go.
I think he's been Pelotoning it.
So you have a lot of these flannels, right?
I got a bunch of these flannels, and it's via the team here and Smokey. Smokey is hustling these flannels around a lot, and then my buddy Sean, our buddy Sean Provost, is a huge fan, and I think they're kicking out the same vibes. I think Danny Dreyer and Sean Provost kind of have the same shit going on. They both have a lot of tattoos, and they both kick ass in business, and they're both into fashion. And so Sean is the one that kind of made me aware of Danny, and Smokey's the one that made me aware of the brand. And Sean was like, you need to have this guy on the podcast. This guy's just lighting shit up. He's got like a 50,000 square foot facility out in Tempe, Arizona. That just looks awesome. Like it's like a man cave on crack. It's like instead of a man cave, it's like a man mall. And he's got a bunch of his cars in there. His buddy's got a bunch of vehicles in there, and they work on their cars and all kinds of different shit like that. So very similar to Sean. Like Sean's into coffee and into cars. And another similarity to Sean is that Sean didn't invent coffee.
Yeah.
Danny Dreyer didn't invent or create flannels, but he made flannels that are better executed than most on the market, and maybe even better than everybody. And now there's probably a lot of people trying to mimic that and trying to ride the coattails of that. It's interesting, right? Because like a flannel is just a checkered long sleeve shirt. I mean, who wears flannels? Like people in colder temperature climates and farmers to protect themselves from like the sun. But other than that, who cares about flannels? Well, this guy, helps people to care about flannels. I think maybe like West Coast choppers or something. You can kind of date it back to some of that stuff. But it's my understanding is a lot of it is steeped in a lot of motorcycle people like it, and his shit is taken off.
Don't forget lowriders.
There you go.
I'm pretty sure there's multiple photos of like my dad and my uncles, rolling around in flannels in their lowriders. My dad had an Impala, 64 Impala.
Ooh.
He still has a 48 panel truck.
Should I go in the red room?
There we go. But
Like here?
yeah, so the lowrider culture for sure is a huge aspect of it all.
What's going on, Danny? Can you hear us okay?
Oh, I can. How are you guys?
Nice.
We are doing fantastic. Congratulations with the success of your brand and everything you have going on, man.
Dude, thank you so much. It means a ton to me, man. I really, really appreciate that.
First thing we got to kick it off with, man, is that, how can you be taken seriously as a businessman when you're covered in tattoos head to toe? I mean, that's unconventional. You can't be that way, right?
Right. I love defying those kinds of things. Like I even like on a personal level, like I tell my kids, like we go to the grocery store or something like that. I'm like, if you see a woman in front of you, and just like trying to teach them manners and stuff, like opening doors for ladies, or if I see like an old lady or something, then like trying to carry her groceries or something like that, trying to defy all odds, even on a personal level. But yes, it's a funny way of doing business, especially with like very, very corporate places like we're starting to get into.
What's your background? Like, what were you like, in school and stuff like that? Like, do the tattoos represent, something inside of you that wanted to be a little different? Like, did you maybe struggle in school, or what was that experience like for you?
Yes, largely. I would say that my exterior now probably shows the exact story that you would imagine in the past. So I didn't fit in at school really anywhere. I excelled pretty well. I did well academically for the most part, but I was extremely bored. I didn't like it. I didn't like conventional ways. I didn't ever really want to fit into the box that they say that you should. I was very artistic, very creative. And that kind of lends to, my reasoning for always being into artistic expressions, like as far as tattoos and whatnot. I'm also more so from a time, like I've barely been tattooed in the last like 10 years. Oh, wow. So I'm more so from a time that realistically, they weren't as widely accepted as they are today. Now I really don't see many barriers in it, but like when I was younger, that's definitely a big thing. But I signed myself out of school the day I turned 18. I'm a high school dropout. I went back and went to continuation school just to get my diploma and stuff. I have zero college, experience. I never went to business school or anything like that. So, I'm kind of a self-taught, self-moved person.
Do you share that? Do you share some of that with your children, or are they maybe too young at the moment to talk to them about that kind of stuff?
They're too young at the moment. However, they're in education. Their morale and their manners are extremely, extremely important to me. So, like I was just having a conversation with them this morning. Like I'm not a big fan of them playing video games and stuff like that. And so, I was speaking to them about them being there for each other as brothers, because one of them threw a book at the other one or something like that. little one is he's just a hellion. So like
trying to throw some education at the other one's head,
Yeah.
Hoping it seeps in.
But yeah, they're too young for that portion right now. But I spend a lot of time, focusing on what's important with them, or what's important to me, I should say.
Hey, Danny, I was curious, like, so if I was in high school and I heard that you had dropped out, I'd be like, yep, it worked for him. It's going to work for me. Like, I mean, the three of us, we all didn't really like love school. I actually really hated it. But like, do you have any advice for, some of the younger listeners out there that, they're like, yeah, like that's the path I want to go down. Like, like even with my daughter, I'm like, yeah, school sucks, but then I'm like, shit, I can't say that, like I have to be a little bit more responsible. So how can we responsibly, kind of educate the youth and be like, hey, like, I don't know what that was, but like we can, kind of go down our own path. It doesn't have to be this, 1 through 12 and then college and then job type of thing. Like, how can we like give them some like, some advice that like, hey, you can break the mold?
Yes, I think that's an incredible question, actually. So I try not to really. Sorry, I don't know how to turn off my email.
That's all right.
We're all good. We'll just be a nice little chime in the background. It's fine.
Yeah. I try to shy away from that as much as possible when talking to the youth, because I think that education is extremely important. As far as educational institutions, when it comes into college and everything, I do try to promote, I think trade schools are a great thing. I think that's a great path for a lot of people with the ways that we can control entrepreneurship these days and them learning a trade at the same time. I think that's an incredible opportunity. However, I do think that education is extremely important. And I think I would always tell my kids to stay in school and to stick it out. And I think that realistically, what happened with me when I was younger is, and even into my 20s, and I'm finding this out even into my early 30s, is that you have to be the master of your mind. And I always quit because I was like, I don't like this. I'm over it, And the thing is that I did the opposite when building my business. And had I done the same way that I did through school, had I done it the same way that I'd done through so many other things, I wouldn't be where I am today.
When you say you did the opposite, what do you mean? Like you said you quit on a lot of things when you were a kid and you handled your business differently. Like when you started, you're saying that you just didn't quit on anything when it came to your business?
Yes. And how I mean that is like, the roller coaster that is entrepreneurism, the roller coaster that is business, the amount of things that we go through, when building a business or being a brand builder. If you were to stop at the first hard one or the fucking 10th hard one, it's like, then we would never see it through. And I think a lot of people look at a larger business, a larger scale, and they're like, wow, you've grown your brand to this level. And they think it gets easier, and it doesn't. It's like, it's just that those roadblocks just become monumentally fucking bigger. Yeah. And it's just like, and it gets so crazy. That roller coaster gets steeper. The highs get higher. The lows get lower. And you have to learn that, that fortitude, the resilience and everything moving forward. And that's been a huge, huge learning curve in my life, is being like, looking at it and not letting outside factors get into your mind and having to control those thoughts. Just this morning, right before I got on this call with you guys, I'm like on the phone about like my divorce and going through all this crazy shit. And it's like, you have to be able to just like snap out and be like, okay, cool. Like, this doesn't affect me. I'm taking the rest of the day positive. Like, what are the positives in this? What do I learn from this? How can this make me better? Forge forward, move on, and just go, and hit it harder than ever before.
You mentioned when you were a kid, you would stop certain things. And I think kids are really intuitive. Like, they stop stuff a lot of times because they're not good at it, which we don't want to see that from our children. We want to encourage them to kind of push forward into it. But I'm kind of obsessed with finding out like what people really like to do and what my children really like to do, and doing my best to have them lean towards that, encourage them and push them towards things that they sort of naturally like. Obviously, as a parent, you got to toe the line because you have to force them to do some shit that they sometimes don't want to do because it's overall like hang out with their grandparents or something. There's certain things you want your kids to understand the value of that as they move along. But I find it really interesting that a lot of times we are just like, I don't like that. And it's not a coincidence, I don't think. We don't enjoy it. We don't like it. We're not very good at it. Like if you went and played football with your buddies and every time you played, you cried, you probably just wouldn't care to play football anymore.
I highly agree. I 100% agree. And I push my kids quite a bit. Like I take them skateboard lessons. They're starting golf lessons right now. They haven't really been big on the team sport thing, but that's 100% true, and I think I was definitely that way, but would give up too soon. It's like as soon as something got hard, it was like I didn't see the big picture. And I think in how that relates to business even is that some people have that 30,000 foot view of looking outside the box and seeing seeing what could be and what we are pushing towards, what the goals end up being. And so it seems like teaching your kids to be goal oriented, goal driven, and being able to see kind of outside the box and be able to look at things positively is a huge thing. And I try to focus on that, but I pretty much just kind of push them and just like, hey, give me 5 more practices. Or give me like 5 more games or whatever, and then we'll decide. Then we'll sit back and decide. And after that, if you still don't like it, hey, I'm not going to force you to do anything you don't like.
I'm really curious.
But I highly agree with everything you're saying.
I'm really curious about you specifically right now, because you were mentioning when you were younger, you'd do things, you'd quit. That was how you were until you started your business, right? And that kind of really echoes the idea of like having a fixed type of mindset. Like you do something, you don't think you're good enough for it, and you just quit immediately because you're not good. And that's kind of hard. It's hard to shift your mindset to doing something and continuing to do it even when it's really hard and it really, really sucks. Most people can't make that mindset shift, or they don't even realize that they don't have the right mindset. So for you, what did you do before Dixxon as far as like work and all of that is concerned? And when did that mindset shift happen for you? Or when did you realize, hey, I need to change the way I'm thinking about the way I do these things, or else I'm not going to be able to move forward? When did that shift happen for you?
So I think that shift happened probably when I was about 25, and this is a little bit before Dixxon. So I had a couple other businesses before that. I was kind of during that whole mortgage blow up and everything, tried to do the mortgage thing. I was a title rep for a little while. I was always interested in real estate, more so I think at the time just interested in money. I was just young, thought that would fix everything. So it was like, I see all these guys like flying private jets going to Vegas every weekend, hottest chicks are around them. It's like, you know how it is. Like that's the front that the mortgage guys give you, and that's how you end up in a fucking call center. Like, you can do all these things, the bottle service and everything that comes with it. And so I wasn't great at it, but I learned a lot about sales and a lot about technique and stuff there. I went on after that to figure out I wanted to be passionately involved in what I did. So after living briefly in Chicago, I moved back and I bought a motorcycle shop with my pops. And we independently ran this motorcycle shop for about 7 years while I was there. And while I was there, I started, my wife at the time was working in, she was in escrow, and I learned about like how they transported escrow docs and stuff at the time. So I started a courier company that was the only one that had motorcycles riding for it, and so that they could get into LA and split lanes the whole time, because in LA or in California you can split traffic. So we were able to get the fastest turn times, operate on less gas, be a little bit more efficient. And I started that when I was about 24 years old. However, I still had like that mindset of that mortgage guy, that young broker, and just like, live like like I was balling, we were taking limos and getting bottle service everywhere. We were doing really well. And just as quickly as it started, it quickly came to an abrupt stop. And a lot of the reasons why it came to a stop, because I was not open to hearing other people's ideas. I was not open to thinking collaboratively, and it wasn't open. Like I let my pride take over, really. And when I saw all that go away, just because I couldn't handle myself in a boardroom meeting, because I couldn't handle the pressure, I couldn't handle looking at something from a different perspective, that ship started to change. So then when I started Dixxon, I was open, like completely open to different ideas, completely open to looking at doing it for other reasons, outside of financial, and being fulfilled by it, by growing myself. And I think that was a big turning point for me, like about a year or two into Dixxon, and really figuring out that it's like, hey, you got to suck it up sometimes, and you got to hear all the shit that you don't want to hear. You have to process it all, turn it around, and turn it into something positive, and turn it into growth for yourself. And I wasn't about it. And to be honest with you, even like self-help talks, podcasts, all that kind of stuff, books, like I wasn't into any of that stuff. And I have to be completely honest. The first time I heard Andy Frisella talk was the first time that it was like someone spoke to me, it was like that you grabbed my attention, and I was like, holy fuck, like, you can't turn this off. Like, it's like, you can't deny,
I think it's very clear when you listen to Andy Frisella that he's kind of yelling at himself. And yes. I think you kind of get on his side and you're like, fuck, man, I feel the exact same way. Like I need to, I mean, you shouldn't need someone to kind of tell you to suck it up and to go get it. But sometimes you do. And he's the guy that has neglected fitness. He's the guy that's neglected certain things. And as he was building his business, he went up to 300 something pounds. He admits he was out of shape. He admits that he neglected certain things. He admits that his ego got in the way, as you were mentioning. And so I think when I heard him for the first time, it was the same thing with me. I was like, oh my God, like he should be talking into a mirror because he's talking to himself. But how many of us need that self-talk? How many of us need to sit down across from a mirror and have a good, hard talk with ourselves?
Absolutely. I think you're 100% correct. And like on my social media, like my following isn't anything like yours, but as far as like getting out to my customers and whatnot, I try to take the same approach by, showing it's like, hey, I'm saying these things, but it's because I need to hear this shit today. Like I'm saying this because it's like, as I say it and I write it, it's like the best way for me to like get it all inside and, internalize it and for everything that I need that day. I'm not perfect. I don't know everything. I don't even know everything that I don't know, which is actually a very important thing to, to figure out at some point. It's like in saying, hey, this is where I come from, not to show off. I'm telling you because I want you to know that it's possible. And I think that his approach is very similar as well. And that's why it grabbed me, because when you look at the end result guy, say you look at Andy right now, and it makes everything look like, well, that guy got lucky. Well, that guy this, well, that guy that, it's like, instead you look at like 300 something pound Andy and like, and living on a couch that smell like probably came from like dumpster or Craigslist or something. And then you think about the journey that it goes on, then things start becoming, it's like, wow, I can find this tangible success that I can hold and feel and touch and build upon this, if this guy could do it, I could do it, and I think that's almost a responsibility of some of us from a following standpoint, from a voice standpoint, having podcasts and whatnot, and he does a great job of that.
I encourage a lot of young people to go out into the world and get punched in the face, and, go and find the hard shit in life. And you mentioned moving to Chicago, you mentioned having a business with your dad, navigating those waters and being in business with a family member is very, very difficult. And then moving is really difficult. But I always encourage young people like, I was thinking about moving to North Carolina. I'm like, go, you should really, it's already in your head. That sounds like a wonderful thing. You could always come back. You could always say, hey, I like California more, or whatever it is. What did you find and what did you learn from that experience of moving around a little bit and having some of these different jobs?
You know what? I love the fact that I always wanted to live in a big city. I always wanted to live in New York. Then I visited Chicago and I was like, oh, it's a smaller, like cleaner version, basically. Like I'd rather live here. Plus you get a little bit of tinge of that Midwestern hospitality. What I found was that I found myself insignificant, which after that ego trip of a business thing, I needed to find. And it's like, you got thousands of people walking by every day. It's like, you don't know that dude's story. You don't know this person's story. Those guys, like the guys coming out of McDonald's are sitting at the same bus stop as the guys coming out of the guys of Miracle Mile. And it's like, you don't know their story and you realize that you're somewhat insignificant, and it's up to you to only just make yourself happy, really. And it's up to you to have that drive, to find the goals, and success is going to find you. The success is not all about the flossing and all the shit that you think it's about before, I think when we're growing up. And that was a big deal for me. And it was also a big deal for me to get comfortable being alone. Just alone in a big city like that, doing your own thing and fulfilling your time with things that actually start to add value to you, actually start adding value to, your skill set and stuff like that. You have to time when you're younger, and you also have the time to start checking off those wins. You start with small steps, and just getting there is a win. Thriving out there is like 10 steps down the line, but just being able to pay for yourself to be there, paying your own way, finding a new job, meeting new people, finding a set of friends, just stuff like that. It's like you start preparing yourself for that. Then I think that you get, I would call it comfortable being uncomfortable. And that is very, very, very important, and staying uncomfortable always.
When you started Dixxon, how long did it take you to start being profitable with it? Because you mentioned that you, for the first 2 years, you really were working on your mindset. You were changing things, right? When I think about that, it's like, well, you're starting this business that's amazing right now, but in those first few years, it must have been a pretty difficult thing if you still weren't where you needed to be to actually run a successful business, right?
Right. I was profitable by year 3. However, it took me to year 4 or 5 till it became my full time. So I was working at Harley like 60 hours a week, had a new baby at home. I'd come home, work on it all night, ship out orders, branding, doing all this stuff. And then all the while, like when we started out, we started with blanks, and we were putting our own tags in blanks basically, and just working on branding. And then still making t-shirts and prints and art and stuff like that. However, we didn't know how to make custom flannels yet. And I'm not a trained fashion guy. I didn't know how to make patterns or anything like that. And it was fully, I had to commit to learning my own craft. And I basically learned it on my own. I had a couple mentors along the way that were amazing, but I kind of like, I didn't want to reach out to the big brands because I didn't really want to be like the big brands so much. I wanted it to be the way I wanted to do it. I wanted it to talk to a culture that I felt like it didn't talk to, or that no one else talked to. And so it was very important, those times where I don't know that I had the time to really think about it because I was working so much. I just looked at it as a sink or swim thing. And that's why we use that slogan still a lot. And also, a lot of the work hard part, because I didn't have a choice. Like a lot of people were like, how'd you stay motivated? How'd you keep going? I don't have a fucking choice, dude. I gotta keep going, And like that was, I think that early success was due just to that. It was like, just because of like, I didn't have time to sit back and analyze much more than, marketing and what kind of push we were doing, what kind of growth we were getting. I just kept on going. It was just like, all I knew was the times that I felt like quitting, I was like, I can't. Like, I already know what the other side is like because I'm there, and I've been there before, but I don't know what's next. And maybe there's a fucking chance that what's next is monumental, and maybe there's a chance that what's next is just slightly better than it was before. But the thing is, I don't have a choice. So like, I'm just not going to quit. There's just no way in hell that I'm going to do this. So
yeah, I'm kind of wondering if you maybe feel like you don't have a choice because that insignificance that you felt when you said you were in Chicago, you probably don't want to feel that ever again.
Right. You're very right.
When we walk into a facility that's like however many square feet, 50,000 square feet, like your facility is now, and you have the employees that you have and you have the stuff built up that you have, it's almost impossible to feel insignificant. Everybody there, I'm sure, is bought into the culture, and they are probably doing their best to make sure that your day is as least stressful as possible, so that you can still be creative and you can still have time to do other things.
Yes, I am so fortunate for that last part that you mentioned. So a lot of those guys have picked up, a lot of our staff has picked up that they basically, I spent a long time at first learning how to manage people, and mostly through mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but spent a lot of time managing people and showing them how hard I worked. And basically what came of it is that they're like, now they're like, dude, please go on vacation. Like, like just go enjoy your life. Like, you've been working your ass off for so long, enjoy what this world has to offer. And a lot of stuff lately has been that way. It's been a good balance of that. But before, I was just like hit the ground just so hard over and over and over and over again. I'm going to outwork every person here. I'm going to be the first one here, last one to leave, and everything else. And, now I've found more time for my kids. I actually go to doctor's appointments and dentist appointments, and stuff like that. My dentist is like yelling at me. He's like, dude, you just didn't show up for like 6 years. And it was like, wow, I was working. But it's really cool now because my staff cares about me, on a personal level, which is really cool and a really unique and very neat thing. On the significance level, I forget when I walk in, and every once in a while I try to take the reflection and go to the end of the warehouse and look at it and just be like, holy shit, I never ever thought that I could have done this. I never even could envision that that's where it could go. I just didn't even know it was possible. Just kept on pushing and pushing and pushing, and I don't reflect enough, I think, sometimes. But now I am starting to find the time to do it, and really helps you stay grounded. And I think with that positivity, you let go of a lot that's inside of you, and it lets you have more room for creativity. So that's been a big focus for me lately, is like, instead of being so hard on myself and being my own toughest critic, is really starting to be like, okay, cool. Like, I could do this, have some confidence in it, know that I know what I'm doing, and then know that there's still more to learn, and have time scheduled and dedicated to those times to, to be able to learn more and, to put forth and personal growth. But on a daily basis, I generally, like, I walk straight to my office. I don't even look around, and I just hit the ground running. I just work hard as hell.
Yeah, early on, because you said you were working 60 hours a week, you had a new baby, and then you were just the rest of your like waking hours you were working on Dixxon. So when you first started, not even necessarily brand awareness, but like the following and like the lore behind Dixxon is gigantic. How did you develop that when you were already doing so many things everywhere else?
I think the fact that I had solidified myself in the motorcycle industry for almost 10 years really helped me, because like I knew the magazine publication. So like we were able to get into Hot Bike early on. We were able to get into Baggers Magazine early on, stuff like that. But what I found was that I was kind of sick of that, and I wanted to branch out into all the other things that made me who I was. And that's when we really started to grow. I've never admitted this on a podcast, I don't think. However, our business plan of and the allure of limited stuff just came from because we didn't have enough money to buy anymore. And it takes so long to make the stuff. It's like, it's going to take another like 90 days for me to make this certain colorway. I can't just like bring it back out. Like I got to be like forecasted out. And we just kind of kept on like taking it, saving it, putting it back in, putting it back in, putting it back in, putting it back in. And, and then, but now like we enjoy that limited nature of it. But at first, like people were like, how did you come up with that? And it's like, because we just didn't have any money. I was like, I couldn't. I had no control.
Limited certainly sounds a lot better than we don't have enough money to do anything yet sale,
That's sick.
Well, along with that, I'm curious how your days looked, because working 60 hours a week and then having to start a new totally type of apparel business, but then having to learn the process of making apparel, make it custom, all of this type of work, it doesn't seem that you had time for leisure. Am I correct? Or how did that actually look? Yeah.
Absolutely correct. I slept like 4 hours a day. It was just, I do all my packing and shipping myself. At that point, I was just hustling my ass off so that my wife could stay home and take care of the kids. And so she was pregnant again pretty much when we were really started getting going. And I would I'd pull all the orders at night, try to make like a game out of it, with my youngest. It was like 2 or 3 at the time. Mm-hmm. And because that's the only time I got to spend with him really. And, basically I'd leave them all stacked up on the table. So if she got up early with the baby, once she had our second kid, she'd come down and pack the orders while he was like taking a nap or whatever. And we kind of juggle our days like that. And so we're just grinding, man. It was a crazy time, but we were happy. we weren't together a lot, but it was exciting. It was exciting and new, and it was ours, you know? And I don't know. When I look back on it, I didn't have a lot of time for leisure. Like I stopped drinking, stopped like hanging out with anybody. Like just like, I mean, I was just focused on this. It was just family and business. That's it, you know? And those were great times. And we had just moved to Arizona. You know, I'm from California originally. Just moved to Arizona for good schools for the kids, for hopefully lower overhead as far as if we ever got to the point we could have a warehouse, stuff like that. I was all opposed to it. I totally hate the desert. Not a big fan. But hey, for business and for life, you got to do what you got to do, you know? And so it was a grind of a time. Like my leisure, to be honest with you, I had like a 45-minute commute to work at that time, and I just ride my motorcycle to work every day as much as possible. And that was my like mind clearing moment of the day, you know? But what I wish I would have done differently at that time, and probably throughout most of my career, has been more like fitness focused, because seeing how much that gives my mind now, even though I'm extremely out of shape still, this is a new journey for me. It gives so much to my mind and so much more, so much room to move. It takes away so much negativity out of it that I feel like had I been more focused on that, I would have had even a better schedule.
Yeah, you're definitely less stressed. The better you eat, and the more that your body can handle from a physical perspective, shit just kind of slides off you a little bit easier. You do look a lot healthier from previous pictures and videos I've seen. What kind of progress have you made with your fitness? Looks like you're heading in the right direction to me.
Yeah, I've recently, in the last couple months, lost about like 45 pounds.
That's fucking awesome, dude. Congratulations.
Yeah, but I also lost like a lot of strength during that time. So now I'm like back in the gym lifting and stuff, and it's been a cool journey. I think like it started taking a toll on me a little bit just because like kind of have like a new single life. And so then I'm like, oh, I want to hang out with 25-year-old girls, and those girls like go to clubs and do, you know, I'm not 25 anymore. Can't keep up. And so now I'm really on track on, you know, on eating clean every day and kind of doing my thing. Which is good. It opens my mind up. Like I was saying, like, you know, it blocks out the negativity. My days start so much more positive. We have a full gym here at Dixxon, and
Nice.
and so like most of like my top guys and top creatives, like I have a trainer that comes in for them, and they do that during work hours, which is awesome. You know, increases productivity.
Yeah.
The vibe around here has been much lighter and brighter. It's been great. You know, it's, if anyone's listening to this and they're thinking, hey, I gotta bootstrap my company, I gotta do this, and this, and you're anything like me and you're eating Taco Bell and taking Instagram pictures of a product on the ground at Harley, you know, so you can sell it after work. You know, it's introducing those kinds of things into your life is going to make everything just so much easier.
What have you done from a fitness perspective that you've been able to be consistent with? Because that's what we see as the biggest problem, is just people being able to comply to something.
Right. I've been doing lately, I just have someone prep my meals for me. I think that's like my biggest thing. Cause I'm, you know, I never, me and Nicole, my now ex-wife, we used to divide and conquer. And so she's like, stay at home, take care of the kids. And I'm full on just all business. And so I wasn't around them as much. I've only had my kids like by myself twice before like we split up. And so then enter this whole new thing where it's like half my week is like, you know, single dad, and I'm with the kids, you know, like 3 or 4 days in a row. And the positive of it is the best time of my life. It's like I'm learning them all over again. And you know, I don't think I was a bad dad before. I just wasn't as present. And presence has been a big thing that I've learned lately, because I was just so like, you know, stuck on my phone, just constantly grinding on the marketing, constantly grinding on design. And I just didn't pay attention. Even if I was there, I wasn't fully present. So basically through doing that, I've found myself so busy, like, you know, but I'm like, I leave work early now, so I'm with them. I cook with them and everything. And so it's like first part of my week is a whirlwind. It's just like, you know, goes past. And then I have to keep myself accountable for the next part of the week, because since I could do whatever I want, essentially, suddenly in my life. It's like you kind of like get stuck in these ways of like you want to just like, oh well, so wants to go here and I can go here and I can go there, and then before you know it, you're 6 meals out, like eating crappy and stuff like that. And so I was like, I really need to reel myself back in. So having a meal prep service prep that part of my week has been a huge success for me on the places that I lacked. And then the rest of the time when I'm with the boys, I make them eat pretty healthy anyways. So like I just cook with them and try to make it fun.
Is it like super healthy diet, or is it just kind of norm? Like, is it some specific plan, or is it just kind of like normal whole food type of thing?
Normal whole food type of thing. I don't. That's an area where I need to pay attention to like your Instagram more and like. Like I was almost scared to go on this podcast because when it comes to like fitness and diet and all that kind of stuff, like I'm not the guy to talk to at all.
No, but people love talking to people like you because that's our listeners. Our listeners are the ones that are like, there's some that have figured it out, but there's many that are like in the process of figuring it out. And they love to hear from people that are just going through the process. For like Nsima and I, like some of the beginning stuff is so far behind, like, your creation with the flannels and stuff. You barely remember like how hard you remember it was hard and difficult, but to try to explain to somebody from ground zero the whole process, you'd be like, what is this guy, an idiot? How come he doesn't understand? Like, he doesn't even understand this is how long the arms are supposed to be, or like just have no reference point, And so there's many people that are in your same shoes where they're just expressing their fitness side for the first time in their lives, and they're like, what the fuck do I do? Am I supposed to? One guy told me to lift heavy. Another guy said I should be doing 20 reps. Another guy said CrossFit's the best. Another guy said Olympic lifting's. You're like, I'm supposed to do cardio. You're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do?
And don't sell yourself short. Like, you've lost 45 pounds. That's a big fucking deal. Like, you've been doing something right. So we want to know what the hell that is.
Well, I was just, that was like, you're newly going through this divorce thing. And you have to have like somewhere to like put your energy and your mind and everything. And so I found that if I just sat still, I would ruin myself and I couldn't sleep. So I just like, dude, I'd just wail on the punching bag just for as long as I could, dude. And it's like, and I've always hated cardio, but I would, I'd jump on a Peloton and like, do sessions on a Peloton, try to do that kind of stuff. And I kind of ignored weights for a little while. And so that's where it come in. I said that I lost a lot of my strength. And so like, I've been having some very, very humbling sessions in the gym lately. And it was totally such a bummer, like not like being in football or hockey or something when I was growing up. Yeah. And, so I just did that, and I just focused on, I just tried to not eat carbs really. And I love candy. It's stupid. I'm like a grown kid, dude. Like, I like gummy bears and gummy worms and just dumb shit. It's like, I'd rather just like eat that, so, and eat all my kids' fruit snacks and shit. Mm-hmm. But I kind of just like ignored all that completely. And I was like, I got to get away from that and focused on like mostly protein. I hate vegetables. So like I try to drink the greens in the morning or something. I mix in, like protein powder with my coffee in the morning instead of creamer, just subtle changes, I guess. And I think that I was just living an extremely bad lifestyle before, so that like, it really helped,
that makes
really
me, helped. Yeah, that makes me kind of curious because, you mentioned that the one thing you would have changed when you were building up Dixxon would be your focus on your fitness. And then you also just mentioned that, like, when the whole the separation thing started happening, you started like, you needed a place to put your energy. So is that what kind of made you have that shift towards fitness, like that area of your life? Like what was that shift for you? Why did that start happening?
I think it was because like I used to have all of my energy into it 100%. And now I have 65 employees or so. And so, I have production assistants, and it's no longer my friends that I'm trying to train into executives, and it's like, there's actually people that are better at their jobs than I could do it, and that's a big shift in business too, which is an incredible place that you have to kind of take your company to. And so a lot has been taken off my plate. So then I suddenly have downtime, and that downtime I could either sit there and like, and wallow in the misery, or, in the should-haves and would-haves and could-haves or whatever, and then end up not sleeping. And then I'm again, not productive the next day, or find a way that just makes me tired as fuck and get it all out, get all the bad energy out. And then I was able to finally like sleep I was looking better, feeling better. I was getting to work. My head was working right again. I was just like, man, I was like, this is the answer. Obviously, I gotta continue on this. This is what I've been missing,
From a business perspective, in the beginning stages, how did you communicate what you wanted to have as a culture with everybody, within your company? Probably not that hard, since it was like your buddies and they're kind of seeing the whole thing build up. But how are you able to communicate? Because I think that can be a really tough thing. And then even moving into the way you are now, now you got people like hopping in that are professionals in design, but maybe they've never been on a motorcycle. Like maybe they're unfamiliar with the territory 100%, but they still fit the needs of what your company needs. How do you share the culture with people, from the beginning and even now?
So now it's changed a lot. In the beginning, it was more like, like you said, my friends, we shared similar interests and everything. So it seemed like it made perfect sense. Now it is very different. And, just like you said, hiring professionals that might not fit that mold. However, now we've moved into so many genres. And what was important for me to the outside was me showing that there's a reason I'm in those genres, is because, because it's me, because it's my life and it's how I grew up, and as far as like the motorcycles, the lowriders, even when we get into music, there's the mix of, hip hop, metal, hardcore, stuff like that. And I'm just such a mix of so many things that it allowed me to connect with a lot of people on the outside. Now on the inside, we're very, very careful about who we hire, but we've also found that, I get people that, they DM me and they're like, dude, I love to party and ride motorcycles. I want to work there. Like, that's exactly the opposite of what I want to hear. You're not working here. But I think that it's gotten to a point where now the creativity speaks for itself. And so the people want to be involved in creativity. Now, the way that I communicate it best is that I have, I try to have weekly staff meetings and have my entire staff present. And I'll talk about things and be as transparent as possible to everyone to let them know, like, hey, these are the finals coming out. These are the reason why we're doing it. For example, like the one you're wearing, the Shreddy one, explain to them like, hey, I remember what it's like to be a smaller brand, and Blake and Aaron are awesome. And I 100% like believe in these kids. And I think that what they're doing is amazing. And, and then on a side note, Blake's an amazing driver. So it's like, I take those opportunities to try to collab, not only with the best up top, but the best that I see. Like if I see something like that, I want to help them as much as I can. And I felt like there's people that reached out to me from publications, magazines, stuff like that, that helped me so much so this is the reason why we do this. And so then I tried to convey that to the whole staff so they know exact reasons why we're doing things, the exact remembrance, the reason why we're doing them. Like, the Kobe flannel that you're wearing, it's like when all that went down and we started telling like, hey, we want, to commemorate like an amazing man, it's like. And what I did was like I played some videos, some memorial videos of them and stuff like that. So I tried to educate the staff as much as possible. And I also try to show as much transparency as possible to let them know these are our whys. This is the reason why we do it. And then tie in a lesson on personal growth with them, which is a huge, huge thing for me. Focus on my staff is their own personal growth.
And the easiest way to, build a culture is to have a building of culture. You're building your facility, like you can't help but to want to be the brand when you're inside the brand and you're living and breathing it. It's got like toxic fumes that you're consuming every day, and you have
right.
Cars and boats and different things that you're into, and I think you even have space for in your facility to house some of these things. And people are seeing these styles and they're seeing these different people come in with I guess just like there's like a breath of fresh air probably coming in and out of that facility all the time, all the different people that visit the facility, all the different people that are important to you that come out to the shop and see what you have going on. I think you might even have a store inside the facility. So people seeing that day in and day out, even if you're customer service and you were hired because of your customer service skill, but you maybe aren't into flannels or were never around them before or didn't know anything about them. Once you get into the culture, you're in this facility that breeds this and breathes it every day.
Absolutely. I wanted to build a place that just dripped with inspiration. And a lot of the reason of that was because, coming from a small local mom and pop motorcycle shop, and then having to get a job out here with Harley just so that I could move out here and, basically push my brand and try to grow it. What I noticed is that every Harley dealership I went into, they're not all the same per se. But like they have a lot of that same, they have the same smell, they have the same feel, whatnot. Outstanding staff makes a huge difference in everything, from dealer to dealer. However, it never inspired me. I had to actively stay into motorcycles, which is like one of the loves of my life. But it's like at the same time, it's like when you're doing it day in and day out, you have to actively figure out how to stay passionate about it, and so here I just wanted to make it like not about the shirt, but about the culture. And so that they have walls of history that they can pass through each time and they kind of see it. And it kind of gives them a focus, I think, of like not wanting to let that history down. It's like if you're going to go in there and you're in a bad mood because, your dude broke up with you or some shit, then it's like, and you're walking through that place to get to, sitting down at customer service, like you're going to have to let all of this shit down just for you to not be in the right mind state. And I did the same thing in the art rooms and everything. I basically, most of my own interior design I've done for a bunch of my staff's offices. They're in the ones that have individual offices, so that each one of their spaces is like the style that they like coming to. They're comfortable there. It's one of their favorite places. They'd rather be there than their bedroom, and just try to make it a space that, that is conducive with the goal of wanting to be the best you could be.
What's up, Power Project fam? This episode is brought to you by Element Electrolytes.
Speaking of Element Electrolytes, I actually wanted to ask you, Nsima, you being all jacked and tan and all strong and pretty, do you take your Element Electrolytes pre or post workout?
I actually take it pre, during, and post.
Oh.
And sometimes I'll do more than one pack. So if I finish the pack of Element that I had during like my workout or my jujitsu session, I'll pop out another one, sometimes post. And that hydration really helps my recovery. Because sometimes after you get done with a really hard workout, when you are sweating a lot, you feel sore, you feel kind of tired, and you feel drained. There is absolutely no problem with taking more than one pack of Element.
Yeah, I'm really interested in trying it like intro workout, right? I've always been one of those guys that's like, oh, you got to have your pre-workout and then your post-workout, and in the middle it's like usually water or something, right? But now with Element Electrolytes, from what Rob Wolf told us about how it like maintains strength and all this other just amazing benefits, I'm really stoked about it. And if you guys want to be like us, we actually like getting the value bundle because you essentially get a box for free. But if you're not ready to fully commit, Element is still offering you guys a free Element recharge pack. So that's an 8 sample pack. All you have to do is cover the shipping. You can do so by heading over to drinklmnt.com/powerproject. Again, it's absolutely free. You just have to cover shipping. Make sure you guys go there and check it out right now.
When you mentioned that you started to focus on personal growth when you started the company, there was a time that your company had way less employees, and you mentioned making friends, executives. What do you think was difficult when maybe you had less employees and some of these people knew you better? Was it more difficult for you to inspire the individuals that knew you as an individual versus when you scaled and you're hiring other people that didn't know you as well, know you on a personal level? Did you find it easier to kind of provoke inspiration and motivation out of the people that didn't know you? Because I'm thinking like, if your homies are working with you, your homies know the shit you do. Like they're like, he kind of fucks around in this, like, I can't take it serious. You know what I mean? So was there any of that, or did you really know how to deal with that?
That ended up becoming a big issue actually for me. That was a very, very hard pill to swallow for me, that I even somewhat recently, within the last year or two, had to deal with that. So what I did when we were smaller, and say there's 5 of us and we're just all great friends. Like those are the guys I always wanted to hang out with. They ended up becoming like my best friends. And what I would do is I'd do like book club things with them every week. And we'd read a chapter of like a self-help book. We would sit down and then talk about each one of us, what it meant to me or what it meant to us, put it in our own words, and then describe a point in our life that that you could relate to it. And that was a time of monumental growth. We were like working out together at that time too. It was like, it was really cool. We had set up this small gym in our old warehouse, stuff like that. It was one of the best times of our growth because we all trusted each other. We're all on the same path of personal growth. The problem is that we're all good friends. And so that line between friends and boss is very, very hard for some people to skirt. And for some, they're just really good at it. And they're like, I'd rather know you on a personal level and I know when to separate it. You know, like, I mean, one of my top guys is my brother-in-law. And we work amazing together. And we are like, we couldn't be any more different from each other. Like I call him like the yin to my yang kind of deal, you know, it's like balance each other, you know? But he knows how to separate that stuff. You know, he knows like when we go to Thanksgiving, like don't talk about work anymore. But like, you know, by the end of the night, if we have to go outside and, you know, something catastrophic is happening, then, you know, it's like, it's full on work mode and everything's out the window. But yeah, I had a very difficult time with that. A lot of those guys that started out that way, I grew them. However, this is where I messed up. I always thought, and I've done this in relationships too, I always thought that inflating somebody, even if it wasn't like fully earned, I thought that it would give them more credibility and more awareness, and it would give them more, what are you going to call it?
Confidence maybe, or
confidence, more confidence and security. Like they wouldn't be so insecure about what they didn't know, you know? And so, but what I did is I kind of like, I basically inflated an ego without tools to back it up. And I found out that's a very, very rough place to go, because then when they're on their way out, they're like, oh dude, you're going to crash and burn. Fuck you. Like you don't have me, you know? It's like, and it's like you have to figure out how to do it in small increments and how to reward people for actual, you know, for actually growing and making sure that growth sticks, and they're not just telling you what you want to hear because you're their friend that they're supposed to look at as your boss, you know. And so what it leads to is, you know, bad friendships. It really leads to eventually a bad working environment. And that was a very, very tough pill to swallow once we started adding a lot more people in.
My wife is really good with that part of it, where I'm like, oh, this person, they're doing so good. And she's like, they're doing their job. You know, she brings it back and I'm like,
use some of that direction.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, you know what? You're okay. Yeah, you're right. You know, they're doing what they're paid to do. And if they're going above and beyond, then that's a different conversation. But you can't give people something for nothing. And I think the compliment sandwich can work pretty good, where you hit them with a compliment. Hey, you're doing really well with this. Hey, but this is where you can get a little bit better. And then you end the conversation with another little pat on the back or a hug. Hey, I appreciate what you're doing. This is great. You know, but at least you still got to put that bullshit in the middle there, where they you know, hopefully they heard you because you opened their mind up with saying something nice first.
I got to write that down.
My employees are in the room right now. Like, holy fuck, man.
Now we're going to be understanding everything that goes on.
Yeah. Now it's like when we get a compliment first, we're just going to wait for that second.
I usually just try not to deliver any compliments. That seems to work pretty good.
Yeah. So did growth in the company, in the business, in the company, did that happen and then you had to hire more employees, or did you hire like a designer and something and then you noticed the growth like really exponentially explode?
So our design and production has still been done by the main three of us that have been here pretty much since the beginning. And it continues to be that way, actually. And I was always scared of that because like I didn't want it to lose its organic feel. I didn't want it to lose its way. And myself and Chris Jones, which is like my very first employee, who is our designer, our head designer, I should say, we always said that, hey, the day that we reach or the day that we believe our own hype, this shit is all over. Like that's when it all goes down, you know? And so we always had to remain grounded. We always had to remember where we came from and remember that those are the experiences that we pull from to create the reason why we're able to live the life that we live. And I was always scared to insert someone into that. Now, from a standpoint of I wouldn't say artistic direction, actual hand-drawn art, we have like 3 artists on site, you know, that that they're constantly, all they do all day is draw. They draw, and starts out hand drawn, turns into these patterns and stuff like that. But generally what we do, we have tools now where I'll come up with a bunch of ideas and list them all out, and then as they go through, they get fresh ideas, and then as they want to do their own, and if it's some freehand thing that they come up with, then they throw it in there too. And then I basically end up with huge folders full of art, stuff that I asked for, stuff that they came up with, and being able to build lines a lot easier that way. And I still do that myself, actually. And then now we have like a production assistant and everything that actually keeps us, we weren't like the best at, filing papers or remembering this, remembering that. It just turns into stacks and stacks of, art that we end up going through for hours at a time. And now we have this amazing woman. Her name's Renata. She used to work for Hurley, and then she used to be at Mattel on the Barbie side of things. And so she came in and she just like basically like mama beared the whole thing and like makes it like everything's exactly where it's supposed to be. It's super organized, it's super professional and amazing. And so we've been basically bringing in the right people to perfect the processes that we may have already put into motion, but being very open to change always, consistently change.
Danny, what the fuck? I'm wearing a Barbie flannel right now.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
He just mentioned having a designer from Barbie. He wasn't a designer. Someone that works for him. I think what you're referring to is like the second that you think that you're like cool, new, and fresh is when your shit is like whack, old, and stale. It's like you think you've reached some sort of pinnacle. You think you've reached something, and now there's all the young people. I mean, I'm sure there's many people emulating what you have, and you better stay on top of shit, and you better pretend that you don't know anything and still have a white belt mentality. Otherwise, those younger people who are hungry, that start to build up the resources to be able to do it, they're going to be able to beat you or to catch you here and there, catch you off guard.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like that's where we came from.
Right, right, exactly.
No one took it seriously, and then all of a sudden they're like, shit. So like, you guys are taking market share, and it's like, how did you guys get in here? And it's like, just with a different model, I think that respect goes a long way. Like, I've always tried to respect other brand builders and stuff like that. There was a time for a little while in the beginning where I felt threatened by other people trying to do what we did, and dude, I'd air it out like on social media and try to blast them. And
you versus them.
Asshole move. Yeah, and all I learned was like, I just started a versus brand, and anyone who doesn't like me is just gonna buy this, and it's like, I'm not short on people that that don't like me. I'm one of those like love or hate guys. So it's like, I'm just making money for them, So you kind of learn from your mistakes, and you just shut your mouth and focus on your own race. And then I realized that like, when I'm running my own race and it's just me versus me, and I'm just happy that I get to do what I get to do every day. I have way more creativity. There's no negativity in my life whatsoever. It's amazing.
Where did the actual idea of the flannels come from? Like, was that a specific thing where you were like, I'm going to switch into like making flannels, or did you start by making a hat or a t-shirt? And where's the Dixxon name come from?
So we started with just flannels, like that was the way to go. And the reason why is because I was sick of flannels that just shrank and wrinkled and stuff all the time. So I ended up like going on this, this journey that lasted a couple years of fabrics and trying to figure all that out. Like, what would make sure that it works, and how can we treat it? Because the treatings and how you do everything, and then like then we got on this kick where every single year we add like new features to it, which enters like the sunglass cleaner that came out this year, the pieces in the pockets that you have like the little hole in the pockets on the front, like, so you can put your sunglasses in it or put a pen in it or whatever. And then in the bottom corner, I don't think the Kobe one has it, but the Shreddy one has it for sure. That one at the very bottom corner of the front, if you flip open the corner front, you're gonna find a pink piece at the like by your waist.
This?
Yeah.
Corner front. Oh, pink piece.
Flip it from the inside. It's gonna be on your left-hand side.
Oh,
there you go. So if you put your finger behind that, that'll clean your sunglasses.
And your phone, probably, right?
Yeah, and your phone.
Oh, I have one too.
Dude, that's dope.
Yeah, my
that one does have it too.
My
okay,
phone
perfect.
has jizz all over it.
I want to say that the Kobe flannel might have been the first one that we did it on.
Oh, that's sick. That's smart, bro.
I went to wipe my phone and Pornhub popped up.
That's weird.
Not sure. Maybe my son was playing with my phone.
So we try to just like introduce like different things that we'll do, or like, you know, all these have it, like you guys have the button downs on the collars that came out a couple years ago, so that if you're like riding motorcycles, not flapping you in the face. And so every year it kind of evolves, and that's a big part of business that I think that is very important as well. You can't, and it comes into that believing your own hype thing, is that you can't be just okay with it. You can't like, hey, it's working, let's continue on, you know. And it's like you have to keep on trying to get better, trying to make it more, you know, trying to reinvent where you came from before. And that's where my game and struggle of me versus me really comes in. But it also is like a, you know, I think like probably to my success, it helps greatly.
We got our flannel expert Smokey here, who has like, he knows everything about flannels.
That's not true. I just know by looking at your Instagram page. So you're my sensei on that one.
Yeah, he's wearing like 4 flannels right now because he likes to look really big. So he just stacks them on top of each other. He can barely move and breathe right now.
But the key is to get different sizes, medium, large, XL, and just keep stacking them up. Yeah, big fan, Danny. Wanted to kind of talk to you a little bit about the Harley scene a little bit. I recently got into it, purchased my first Street Bob a couple years back, and just been kind of in love with it. And that's kind of what sparked the flannels and the whole vibe, and just all the cool features you have. Like you went into like the sunglass, you know, micro towel in there, and the collars and everything. And I know your history and experience with working with Harley. How does that play an impact now? I see you have a couple bikes. I know you're heavily into cars and boats and all that cool stuff, and just kind of wanted to see what you see Harley playing a role, or even bikes in general playing a role in your current company.
I believe that it is the very roots of our company. And although I'm not as active in Harleys as I once was, I enjoy the freedom of, you know, trying new things, I guess now. However, I think it's interesting with Harleys, and this is what I always try to tell my staff when I was at Harley. I manage a service department basically. And as I had said earlier, it's hard to stay focused on your passion of that. And that's a passion project place. You know, it's like you earn less for more work, but you get to be around bikes every day. And that's the thing. That's the recipe. Passion project is like, you're lucky though. You get to be around bikes every day. You're like, thanks. It's fucking awesome. I have to know more than everybody to do my job and sell parts. And I can't get paid for it though. You know? Yeah. So what I used to try to remind them, and I'll even tell you, is that there are so many men in America that could be 45 to 60 years old, and their entire life they dreamt of owning a Harley Davidson. Just that brand, that culture, and everything that it means to them, right? And you know, and then from a sublet of that, on a customization route, you know, I mean, there's an entire industry alive that is alive just because of the brand Harley Davidson, that's just aftermarket and not even affiliated with the actual brand Harley Davidson. So I think it's, you know, from a business model standpoint, from a culture standpoint, it's extremely unique, and it's extremely like diverse place that is so creativity based that I love. You know, it's artistic based. So I've always been infatuated with that. And so I try to carry that thought into, you know, our marketing still, and remembering what it's like to be on a Harley for the first time, remembering what it's like to be outside of the scene, and that smile that it gives you like on your face and everything. And then, you know, also it's great that they have gatherings and people learn from each other, and, you know, and that there's a decent amount of mutual respect in most of those places. And there's a lot of good people. And I've met a lot of good people through that. As I get older, I find myself getting more into cars and stuff, mostly because I can do it with my kids. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's like, and because like I just, if I get on a bike, like I can go fast as fuck. Like I just always like, I'm like, let's go for a cruise real quick. And everyone that I'm with, they're like, and we're like, before, doing like 110 split lanes, like in Arizona, you're not even allowed to split lanes here, but I'm from California. And I'm like, whatever, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Try and catch, but that's like my thrill. And so I'm kind of like, all right, I don't really want to get wiped across a windshield today. Like my kids are like getting to that point where like, I have to level out that stupidity factor, and I don't have that control, it's like that throttle, like it makes me live, but don't get me wrong. I still do it like once a week to make sure that I, keep my mind at ease. But that's kind of where I'm at recently. I don't have to go to the shows as much anymore, but I like to pop up here and there. And so that's the reason why that exclusivity model that we run, we never do the same show twice. We never do it years and years in a row. We don't just show up at Sturgis. And I started getting to the point where I actually, if I did go to the shows, we didn't even set up. I just wanted to go there and finally enjoy them. It's like I wanted to enjoy as a spectator, enjoy as a writer finally, and not be, working for Harley, not be trying to push my brand or any of those kinds of things. And that was, I would call it a luxury that I've been able to, kind of afford myself the last couple of years. And it's been nice. It's a reopening that passion into why motorcycles made sense to me.
That's awesome. What's one of your favorite flannels that or I want to know, what's the number one flannel that you have made? So
I have my personal favorites. Both didn't do that well. That's the odd part. My two favorite flannels are the very first S&S one that we did, which is like a blue and gray one. And then on the same exact token, the red and gray one that is in a fade pattern, just like it, was called the Pulaski. And the Pulaski was really cool because Chris Jones, our head designer, he's from East Coast and he used to be a pro skateboarder. He grew up in like DC area. And that's a park it's like a plaza, and you couldn't skate it unless you were like invited to. It was like an earn your keep kind of place. And, and this is entering like, maybe like 1995-ish skate politics and East Coast kind of vibes. It's just the way it went. And so it meant a lot to him. That park meant a lot to him when he got invited to skate there. Then he got to like step it up with the pros. Then he became pro a little bit after that. Rode around in a van, like did the whole pro thing for a little while, and then started realizing he's going to get old and not going to be as good of a skateboarder. And he learned graphic design and went into the skate industry. So enter, all that kind of stuff. So that was a very important flannel to him, and it's one of my favorites. And then on the other hand, S&S, motor components, like, I mean, they've been around since the 50s. It's like they were the first major brand that approached us and were like, hey, we want you guys to do a collab with us. And I was just floored, dude. I was just like, I was beside myself that we could do that. And I think that was about 4 years ago. And so since then, like our collabs have grown quite a bit, but we still do one a year with S&S, and we still forge a lot of relationships like that. And it's been really cool.
That's awesome.
What's been one of your biggest failures in business? You had something that you just ended up falling pretty flat in your face that you ended up learning something quite a bit about?
I would say management early on, as far as a skill. I just wasn't good at it. And accounting, I couldn't figure out how to pay my taxes right. It was like, it took me a while to figure all that stuff out. And I'll tell you what, like not having like the pressure of, like tax anxiety and stuff like that these days, like, oh man, what a different world. Those things were very hard for me as far as on a personal basis at first. I would just get wound up, super angry, be like yelling at my friends, like screaming over the phone, just like stuff like that. And to this day, I'm actually like super at ease. Like I'm very, very calm and collected. I just watch and take notes, and I'm not the guy who hires and fires anybody, which is really nice. So it's a lot different. From a product standpoint, I don't know. We've done pretty well. That furry jacket, it was like one of my favorite jackets. It had like fur line around it, like Tundra jacket, like last I think it was last year, maybe 2 years ago. It was the first super technical jacket we ever put out. And so I was really proud of it. And I ordered way too many, and they take up a lot of space.
Yep.
So it was like a daily reminder when I walked by the stacks of boxes. It was like, oh my God. It was like,
yeah, sometimes those things are good though, because then you're like, well, that's not really our core competency. And whenever I do something like that, I can just order a lot less of them. It could just be a specialty item.
Exactly. And I think that goes back into like an ego thing. It really does. It's like at the time, then I'm like, no, I could sell 10,000 of these jackets. And it was like, you need to get checked. You got to get kicked in the ball sometimes. And like, and it's just like bring you back down to earth. And you're like, no, let's get realistic with it. Like you'll be lucky if you sell 2,000 of these.
Yeah. If you made like specific, like riding boots or something, like people are like, no, I spend my money with this company because they make the best boots in the world already. And you know, you make the best flannels. Kind of stay in your lane ish, right?
Yeah. Like I feel like nobody should make shoes.
Oh, it seems
like
brutal. Yeah.
Like people are like, why don't you guys make shoes? It's like, but there's Vans and there's Nike and Adidas. Right. Like, I don't know. I mean, I guess you can probably. I mean, Under Armour proved that they could do it, but like, I don't own any. And like, that's a weird thing though. Like from clothing, you know, and from everything else, like enter competition, enter everything else. Shoes just seems like a market that is like, just, I don't know. It seems untouchable.
Yeah.
You have to carry so many different sizes too. I mean, it's crazy.
Earlier, you said that you didn't consider yourself a bad father. You just said that you were kind of, you weren't present. You were grinding. You were building, your empire. And a lot of people probably can, they can relate to that to a certain extent. Do you think that you maybe could have had everything that you have now? It just might have took a little bit more time if you spent a little bit more time, with the kids, or was it just you had to have that in order to have what you have now, and then now you do have the extra time to kind of hang out with the kids? But like, is it like, can you have one without the other? Kind of a question I guess I'm trying to pose here.
So I'll answer that in two different ways.
Okay.
Do I think that I could have done it a little bit differently? Yes. I think that there was at times when it ended up like, I was working with my friends and stuff like that, we could have enjoyed less leisure. I could have made more of a priority to be around and while I was around, more present at that time. However, that presence and knowledge of all those things came from a lot of therapy and counseling and stuff like that, and talking to professionals, trying to unwind the mess that goes on inside of my brain. But can it be done? I've seen it done before. Would I do it differently? Perhaps. Do I regret it? No way. I look at like I charged on, I did what I needed to do. I learned massively from it. And I've grown massively to where I am right now because of it. And when I say grow, I mean personally. And I have a better relationship with them now than I've ever had in their entire lives. I see them more. Everything's great. I love it. I love what we have right now. And I think that they actually respond to it better because they didn't have me as much before. So they really respect that time a lot, and we make it very positive. We do a lot of cool things together. They listen to me. I've always had to be the disciplinarian, which sucked when you're not around that much. And then you come home and you have to be the disciplinarian. You're just like the asshole that never is around. Basically. But now they get to see the full range, and now I get to hang out with them all the time, and I find myself disciplining them way less, and I'm very present. And I don't think I would appreciate today as much had I done it a different way.
I think a lot of creativity and innovation comes from kind of downtime with friends and just kind of hanging out. And so those early days where you said you may have been able to be more productive and maybe had a schedule, it would have been hard to still have that level of creativity if you were like, oh, we got a meeting scheduled from 12 to 1:15, and then 1:30 I got to be with my kid. It's like, it's very difficult to schedule a time and say, hey guys, we're going to get together and be super creative. We're going to get together and create a viral video, or we're going to create a viral flannel. It like doesn't work that way. It comes from fucking around. It comes from you guys talking shit to each other, messing around, and someone's like, oh, we should make a flannel that represents that. And everyone just stops for a second and goes, Oh yeah, we should make a flannel that represents that. That would be amazing. Then you start drawing up ideas, and next thing you know, 5-6 hours went by. You quote unquote wasted a lot of time, but you landed on something spectacular. That's the way it happens around here all the time as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, our early on processes were very, very similar. Well, actually, they kind of still are.
You mentioned that before Dixxon, you and your dad opened a motorcycle shop.
Yes.
Yeah. How big of a role did your dad play in like what you're doing right now, and I guess your business sense? Because I mean, that's pretty uncommon to open a business with your parent.
Right. So I click with my mom really well. So her business, she's very business savvy. My dad's a very different breed than I am. So me and him are very opposite. So we didn't click well in business, but I actually learned a lot from watching the things that I didn't like that he did in business. And he's just very set in his ways. And so there was a lot of things that we saw through that business that I actually used to my advantage here, because it was almost like I'd already gone through the elementary years of I think somewhat of a closed-mindedness, and how that can affect you. And but he's the hardest worker in the room, but he's more of like that worker bee, whereas like I'm more of like one of my staff members come in here and I'm like staring at the wall and they're like, the fuck are you doing? And it's like, working. Like, I have to get inside of here right now. And so it's like trying to channel some shit like through my brain. Yeah. And so it's just different, we were just different we were just good at different things. But it did play a huge role because it made me appreciate a lot of things. Like it made me appreciate how hard we worked to do a certain amount of sales and then look at what we have built in Dixxon, or how to take care of employees. Or I learned a big thing that I felt like some of our employees had us by the balls, like certain techs were really good that we couldn't lose and stuff like that. And I kind of vowed from that day that I would know how to do every single fucking job in the building. And so that nobody could ever have me by the balls in my own business. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're not going to be able to do that to me. Like, cause I can go back and do it all because I've done it all, and I thought that was a very important part for them to always know that I'm not just hiring you to do what you do because I can't. I'm hiring you to do what you do nowadays because you're better at it than I am, but I can still go back and do it.
How did you shift your mindset from, early on yelling at people, mismanagement, and maybe even sometimes, I'm guilty of this as well, having a little bit of a dictatorship, versus opening up your mind and saying, hey, if I give this project off to this other person, I'm fully recognizing that they can and should do a better job than me, because I'm the one who hired them. How did you switch your mind from being like, I can't offload this to this person, they're not going to be able to handle it, and whatever they produce is going to suck 10 times worse than whatever I can produce? Or you're still there. You're still stuck there. Sounds like you still might be a little stuck there.
So I like how you put that. I think there's some steps in the right direction of me just saying, maybe I wasn't good enough at communicating my expectations.
I understand.
And I think that a huge part of growth as a person and as a businessman has to come from accountability. It is so monumentally important. I look at every situation at what my fault was in it. Like, how did I, almost to a fault. But I think the one day that changed it all is that an employee left that I took really good care of, and he just never stopped like blowing me up on social media and through friends and through that and this and everything. And it was the first time I finally took everyone else's advice and I just shut my fucking mouth. And I just didn't say anything. And later on, it kind of disappeared, and he tried everything under the sun, take like our factory, take other stuff, like take on, build a competition, like, stuff like that. And I just kept my mouth shut the whole time, and I trusted the process. And it was the first time in my life that I ever did that. And I call it taking the high road, I guess. And it all worked out for the best. And so now I just kind of shut my mouth, and I'm like, okay, like, let's accept it. Let's move on. I need all of my headspace to be able to move on. And from that day forward, it made so many other processes easy for me because I racked up one win. And then I was like, okay, it actually fucking works. Like, all these people were right, you know? Because you know how it is. You tell your friend, you're like, dude, just get over it. It's not a big deal. Easier said than done, you know? Then you go through it and you just, you know, you're just like, I'm going to go visit his house, or I'm going to like blow him up or do whatever, you know? And it's like, it's just not worth it. You know, it's like, life's too short.
You know, it's funny because I was just listening to something recently where these two dudes are like, one guy was asking this really old guy, what's your best relationship advice? And he was like, shut the fuck up. like right? That's it. Just shut the fuck up. Something happens, just shut the fuck up. You know, you're talking, you're arguing, just shut the fuck up. And that was literally like, just shut up. You know, yeah. I think that's just good general relationship advice in general with friends. With
the guy who wrote the book, you know, Women Are From Mars, or whatever the hell that book is. It's famous. He basically said anything that's negatively charged, think about it several times. You know, and you're probably best off just not saying it. And then then it's hard to interpret like what you consider negatively charged. But those little negative things you throw out in any relationship, whether it's employee or otherwise, they kind of chip away at people, and even if you're kidding around, you know, you got to be for you, especially like just you're in a position of power. People just they take what you say differently than if it just came from another employee. And if it comes from the boss, they're like, "Fuck, man, that really hurt my feelings." He said I was slow with my work or whatever, and you were totally 100% kidding around. You were just making a joke because they maybe said something to you, but it sticks on them, you know, and so. That's been something I've been working on learning myself, and even like through texting and stuff, unless it's with like a good friend or people that throw around some shit back and forth. I try not to end up putting something out there that could be negatively charged between two friends or something.
Oh, absolutely, man. I think that when you're one of those people that you want your voice heard, and you're used to growing up being like, I'll get the last say in things. It just, when it comes into management and business and everything, it is detrimental. It is like not a good thing to have, you know? And even though it's like what's gotten you all the way through life or something. And so I think you're extremely right. You know, just shut the fuck up.
I'm curious about some
other way.
Yeah. I'm curious about your process or something, because earlier in the episode you were talking about how you like have to control your mind and your thoughts, right? And then that's a difficult thing for a lot of people. And it's something that we talk about on the podcast all the time, like reframing things, controlling your self-talk, controlling your thoughts. How did you come across the necessity that you needed to do that? And what is your process for that? Like how do you think about that on a day-to-day basis?
So I'm a huge overthinker. Like I overthink things and I come up with these dramatic conclusions in my head and all kinds of stuff, you know? But then on the other side, like I generally try not to, what has helped me the most is that communication is key constantly. And I always tell all my employees this: communication is key. Never assume anything, always ask. And so it's like, you don't have to ask in a negative tone or anything. Or if you feel that it's, you know, going to a negative place, is trying to reframe that question and asking them straight up, because the rest of it is a waste of time. And so I just try to communicate as much as possible. Communicating with people that cannot communicate back with you is where the problem really happens. That leads to a lot of, you know, misthinking and a lot of, you know, jumping to conclusions and whatnot. So I guess my process generally is just trying to communicate, and just so that I don't take things out of context, and just being, you know, never having too much pride to just be like, hey, what did you mean by this exactly? I don't want to take this like in a bad way, but like, how can I fix this? Or I guess what I learned to say is, that makes sense. I never thought about it that way. How can I support you? And if I always like say something like that, then they're kind of like, shit. Well, you know, it kind of puts them on the spot. Then it like sparks a conversation. They don't feel like you're pushing them away, and then it grabs them in. They're able to explain exactly what they meant through it, and then you waste no time. It's almost like saying, you know, when you're sitting somewhere and you're like, I wonder what blah blah blah. You know, enter any fucking question in the world, and it's like we have these things like attached to our hands. And I'm like, why wonder, like, fucking bring up Google. Like, I type the dumbest shit in Google all the time. Like, like which planet in a row is Saturn? I don't fucking know, but like, I can find out like right now, it's like, and so I try to just like take that same mind state that like, I never want to waste any time. And I don't want to waste any time with whatever space I have left in here, because there's too much stuff going on up there already.
Did we get an answer on
a long-winded way of like getting to the answer?
Did we get an answer on where the name came from? I'm not sure. I think I might have asked it, but I asked it like as part of another question, I think.
I wish I had a better story for this, but we used to be called Stay Gold Flannel Company. We got recognized quickly by like a sneaker magazine or, e-zine or whatever, a website. And that's trademarked by Benny Gold, who's a streetwear brand in San Francisco. He's a phenomenal brand builder. And at first I was just like, I don't know. I didn't know enough about it. So he was just like, yo, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. And he ended up like, he gave me like a month to get rid of all my stuff and basically get rid of Stay Gold. I almost quit, but we were trying to think of something. And I was looking up different cities, looking up all this different stuff. I wanted to call it something kind of Americana like Dixie. And then basically I started looking at longevity-wise, brands that are ambiguous in name last. And when you try to like kind of market a certain thing, like say it's Stay Gold, it's like that might be cool. Like guys that are in traditional tattoos might be cool to the guys that read The Outsiders when they were younger and it meant something to them. However, worldwide, it's not. And so the less that you can shove all your customers into a box and the more that you open that thing up and it's ambiguous to everyone else and you let the product, the service, and the message stand for more than the actual name, then I felt like that was a larger place to growth. You add in an extra X because it's easier when you get into a design capability to have that many letters and split it up in different ways you put it. Then it didn't make it look like it was stereotypical like Dixxon, California, or Dixxon is a city in London. So it kind of came from nowhere. It doesn't mean anything except that it had a lot of strategy behind it.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Is there anything new coming up on the horizon or things that you're working on? I heard that you are heavy into boats and you're working on some custom boat type of stuff. What do you got coming up in the future, and what's got you fired up every morning when you wake up?
Oh man, I have so much fun stuff happening this year. So much stuff. We're doing a lot of stuff with bands. That's pretty much all I'll say with that, I guess. There's going to be a lot of stuff and that's basically us trying to support the music industry because they can't get out and play shows right now. And so we're like, well, if we're cutting them royalties and helping them out and we get to actually work with the bands, it's really cool. So look for some cool stuff like that. The only one that I can actually say would be, like we will be working with Sublime, which would be really cool.
Sick.
Oh yeah.
We were just working with Suicidal Tendencies. Probably be working with Pennywise. Other than that, there's some other super big ones that I can't say right now, but it's gonna be really fun. I have a piece coming up that we're doing with a new release with Sig Sauer, as far as for you guys that are into firearms, and that's a release from them, not a release from us, and it's not a clothing item. That's a new firearm release, but that we will be heavily involved in, which is gonna be super cool. Then Eliminator Boats, they're making me a boat right now that we actually inlaid a flannel plaid or a plaid pattern into the graphic, which is awesome. And then they used a bunch of plaid and Alcantara like along the full interior. And it's all Tiffany blue. It's pretty much like the color you're wearing, actually. It's almost like that, and like a little bit lighter. And that thing's gonna be killer. So I'm looking forward to summer for the first time in a long time because it's hot as hell out here. So yeah, we'll be in Havasu a lot, doing all that. Going to Glamis this weekend, taking out the huge Dixxon trailer for the first time. That's exciting too. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff on the horizon. If anyone wants to check it out, if you don't know already, you can find us on Instagram at Dixxon. That's DIXXON _ Flannel _ Co. You can find me at Danny Dixxon, DANNY DIXXON. And then you'll find, if you're in Canada, if you're in Australia, anything like that, you can find our other countries and affiliates from there as well. So I really appreciate you guys having me on, man. I'm honored to be on your show. You guys had incredible questions, and I think it's gonna be a great listen.
Absolutely. I think the only logical thing left would be, Mark, Danny. I think we should have a Slingshot Dixxon collab coming out soon. That would be sick.
Agreed.
It'd be wonderful. We'll come out there and go over some deadlifting and stuff with you first, and see how it goes from there.
I know. I want to take one of those challenges where you try to eat as much meat as you do.
Yeah, the carnivore challenge.
Yeah, I'd be stoked, man. If you guys ever get out here, you're more than welcome anytime.
Yeah, my friend Sean Provost has a spot out there. I think he came and visited your place. He owns some Dutch Brothers coffees out here in NorCal, and then he has Provost Motorsports. So I'm sure he is probably somebody that you ran into at some point. But yeah, he lives out that way too. So we need to pay him a visit also.
Very cool, man. That would be awesome. I'd be super stoked.
Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, you too, man. Thanks again.
Yo, so whoa, this is yellow as hell on camera. Jesus.
Yeah, the vibrancy is a little bit high, but
That is strong.
hold on, wait, check that. See,
Oh, that's what I look like right now.
yeah, that's what you look like.
Wow. It pops though.
Yeah.
Pops on the skin. So wait, Provost doesn't live in Sac?
He moved.
Wow.
Yeah, he's here a little bit. I think he's selling his place in Woodland, and he's going to go back and forth a little bit. He doesn't really have to be here a lot for Dutch Bros.
Okay.
But Dutch Bros, I think, is finally going up down the street. Remember, we've been talking about that for a while. Dutch Bros going down, kind of over near Starbucks and In-N-Out and stuff like that.
I hope so.
Oh, yeah, there's one in Natomas too that's popping up.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's one
sick.
within a mile away of my house, so that's too close. You know what I mean? Like it needs to be a little bit more difficult to get to.
Yeah.
They're popping up everywhere.
Yo, I find it so crazy though, real quick about like Danny and like the initial 60 hours a week, sleeping 4 hours a night, working on Dixxon. It's just like, when I think about living like that, it's just, it's necessary, but damn.
Right.
That like when you were starting out with all that stuff, you were still taking care of your health to some extent, right? Or
no, I mean, I was I was right in the middle of my powerlifting career. So,
yeah.
I've been fortunate to be somebody that deals with stress just differently. I just, from squatting 1,000 pounds and handling 800-pound bench presses, you're like, so what? We lost $5,000 because something got seized or something, or we missed out on some product, or some products are wet or damaged or something. Just like, well, let's just figure out a solution to it.
Yeah.
I kind of have always been that way. I kind of just have always felt like it's a waste of energy. There are things I can get worked up about, and I used to get worked up about a little bit more. But I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from, like, if somebody else's post or something came in from somewhere else, like, I would just say, well, why don't I insulate myself away from that situation? Or can I insulate myself away from that situation? I remember early on going back and forth with our manufacturer, and I had some problems, and I was getting very frustrated going back and forth. And my wife just said, I'll just deal with this from now on. I was like, perfect. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Even as a bouncer, when I would like kick somebody out of a bar, if I had to physically remove them, one of the rules was that you would have to leave and allow whoever's at the front door to then take care of that. I mean, it depends on, if they're really violent and you have kind of a situation. But you would kick somebody out. They had a beef with you or a problem with you, and now you left.
Yeah.
And now you don't. Your ego's not at stake because that guy didn't like push you or knock you or make you look weak, or you felt threatened. Like, it's all just gone if you just simply can walk away and have somebody else handle it. So I think early on I learned a lot of those lessons, and I also knew that I didn't know anything about business. So I'm like, I know how to make products that I think will be good for people because I've been powerlifting my whole life. This is my thing. This is my forte. But anything beyond that, I don't truly know. Although I do think I had maybe some innate gifts in terms of like being able to market the products and a couple things that were like that. But even that was just communicating more powerlifting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I was like, hey, this is going to help increase your deadlift by 10%, because I've been lifting for a long time, the conversation is really easy on, you know, how this could potentially assist you and whether you think it's right for you or not, or in this case, the bench press.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with, you know, Danny talking about, you know, like you said, the 60 hours a week, you know, it definitely takes the, what we talked about a couple episodes ago about loving the process,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to get the shit beat out of you every single day and then wake up and do it again the next day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then, you know, sacrificing for the unknown. Like he had no idea that this was going to pan out, but he still did it every single day because he absolutely he loved everything about it.
I think the big parallel between he and I is the motorcycles. You know, the motorcycles represent what would be to me is powerlifting. You know, my focus was powerlifting. I didn't really care about business necessarily. I'm like, I'm going to make this thing because this will be dope for powerlifting. This will be really cool for powerlifting. He thought this is going to be cool for people that ride motorcycles. This will be more convenient. This will be nicer. This will be maybe less expensive. Maybe it'll be more durable and things like that. And so if my focus was on business, I would have been out a long time ago, I think, because I would have been bored by it. You know, if someone's like, well, you know, here's how it works and here's the numbers that you have to get to just in order to make a profit. And my story is just so different because it's an invention. And then also I got really fortunate with what the invention was because it doesn't cost anything to ship it. It doesn't cost anything to make it. And so therefore, like I didn't make a liquid product. I didn't make a product that's like foam. If you make a product that's like foam or something soft, it takes up a lot of space. So it costs a lot of money to ship it. If you make something heavy, if I made something out of iron, again, it would cost a lot to ship it. I just happen to make like a basically a piece of cloth that now with the design of flannel, you would think that it's pretty simple, but there's a lot to learn. And I'm sure maybe in the beginning he had buttons falling off these things and you think you have a good product and you wash it twice and it's all fucked up and it seems really simple. But sourcing the material, I mean, he's probably still not even where he wants to be after he's been doing it for a long time, you know?
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time and trying to get the arm length correct with how long this whole seam is of the whole, I'm sure it's just a giant pain in the ass.
Yeah. I didn't know that. Like I knew about Dixxon, but I wasn't like deep in flannel culture like our friend Smokey was. These are comfortable as hell. These like
These are
I've,
nice.
I've tried some flannels and been like,
Yeah, sometimes they're
nice.
itchy.
Sometimes they're itchy.
or, or like where the buttons are, like it'll get all wrinkly and then it just never comes back.
Yeah.
I hated
The
that.
flannel is a pretty excellent choice for like the weather because you're like, you know, here in California, sometimes it's like 35 or 40 when you wake up. If you had a flannel on, you're fairly covered. I mean, it'd still be kind of cold, but if you had a beanie on, you would be probably all set. Later on in the day, if it's 70, you could still really wear the flannel and not be too hot. And if you needed to, if there's too much sunlight pounding down on you, you can pop it off and be all good to go. But sometimes if you put a jacket on, you know, it's like that doesn't really work as well, or is it too hot later on or something like that?
Yeah.
Then you're locked in.
A lot of great business lessons in this podcast, though, for anyone who's trying to like start a company with employees or just even getting ready to start something as far as like naming is concerned and dealing with employees. And there's a lot of really cool gems in this episode.
Yeah, and then also like just not having it all together right away.
Oh yeah,
You know,
2 years he said, but he was still working on some mindset.
Yeah, like that's I loved hearing that he's, you know, he mentioned, you know, the separation that he's going through. Like he's not perfect, you know, like he's more us than, you know, like some of these other, you know, like I don't know, insert any big entrepreneur that's, you know, wildly famous. Sometimes it's hard to relate. But with Danny, it's like, dude, we could instantly hang out with this guy and fit right in.
Gary Vee was born to do this shit.
Right.
You know, he really was. I mean, it's just like part of it's in his blood and just the way that his brain works and him selling baseball cards from a young age and him, you know, working in his dad's business, his dad being like a badass and being from a different country and just being really straightforward with the work ethic that he expected from his son, whether his son was crying like a baby about how much he was working or how hard he was working, didn't make any difference. So that was like instilled in him And Gary Vee is he's sharp as hell, but he's kind of like a computer almost. He has this algorithm that can figure out just about anything. Not everyone's gifted with that. And what I learned today is that Danny, it seems like he was learning on the go. Seemed like he made a lot of mistakes. Seemed like he didn't know what he was doing in a lot of ways. But again, if you go back to what he said in the beginning of the show, he didn't do well in school, but he still thinks education is really important. And I think that what he's talking about, and I could be wrong, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but what he's talking about is the acquisition of some sort of skill set. And how do you get that? You get that through learning stuff. You need to learn a bunch of stuff about something, and then you can monetize that, make a lot of money off it. If it happens to be in something that you like to do, you could find yourself caught up with it and getting obsessed with it, just as he did, working 60 hours a week. How do you get good at something? And fucking do it a lot. Spend a lot of time doing it. So I learned a lot from this show today, and hopefully people that are listening, that idea that they had, if you think that you're going to suck at podcasting, you are going to suck at podcasting. If you are new to it, that's okay. You can do some preliminary work to see if you can start out a little further ahead than most. You can record a bunch of stuff, listen back to it, never put it out there in the world. You can do stuff in front of a mirror, or have a family member listen and say, hey, how bad does this suck? Am I okay to start? But you're going to have to start at some point. And then once you start, that's really when the learning is going to happen, because you'll get critiques coming in from an audience. And sometimes those are hard to listen to. But if you have a white belt mentality and say, hey, has Joe Rogan ever gotten flack? I mean, just look at any podcast Joe Rogan's ever done. Out of the thousands that he's done, negative comments all over the place.
Yep.
And he's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. I mean, no one's been able to touch what he's been able to do from a podcasting perspective as an individual person. He's just absolutely crushed it. So if he has negative comments, you should be expecting some coming your way. But maybe for him, maybe he's learned from some of those. Maybe he just learned to completely ignore them at some point too, and just say, I'm just going to do what works well for me and what feels good to me.
Can't pay attention to that stuff. And yeah, there will be a lot of suckage at the beginning. A lot of suckage at the beginning. And I look back at my Fairverse YouTube videos, and it's just the gag. It's just
a lot of people want to delete them.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of people are like, I deleted a lot of my first couple things. It's like, oh man, you kind of should leave that just for the authenticity, but I understand.
Oh, my shit's still up.
Yeah. My son and my daughter, they both, it's understandable because they were so young, but they have like put all their stuff to be like private or whatever.
That's funny.
My daughter had a really funny YouTube channel. I don't know where she came up with the name, but
what was the name?
It was called Sand Plops.
That's a great name.
I know, it's an amazing name. I was like, how did you think of that name? She's like, I don't even remember. She just thought something else sounded like that word. And because she couldn't say it the right way or whatever it was at the time, she thought it meant sand plop. So that was the name of her YouTube channel, Sand Plops.
That's pretty great. Let me ask you guys, this is such an amazing episode. Do we end it with what we were going?
The poop stories?
I was just...
No, I think we need to have a separate podcast.
We gotta have a set... damn it, man.
People gotta wait.
Okay. We'll save it for later. Okay.
It is saved.
That was a great show.
It was. A good one. We won't tarnish it.
That was really good. We do need to go visit that guy.
Yeah.
That'd be a lot of fun. It'd be really inspiring to me because I've seen some videos of his spot and I was just like, damn, like he really, different than what we have here at Slingshot. I think he probably bought his property. He's like on 1.5 acres and he probably bought the building. And so therefore he dumped not everything he has. He dumped a lot into it in having it be a place that is full of a lot of culture. This place is full of a lot of culture, but there's certain things I didn't want to do because we rent the space out. I didn't want to, we're only here for X amount of years. I don't know what will happen. Sometimes other people come in and buy the building. And then when your lease is up, then you're out, so I didn't want to invest a bunch of money and change the walls and do everything crazy. We do have pictures up and we do have some stuff up, but it would be great to have a spot where we can pour more of that into it because it does remind you of like the beginning stages of where the company came from. And anybody new coming on board can then see all that stuff for the first time and say, oh, okay, well, this is the origin of some of these things. Having the original slingshot around and some of the original podcast stuff around, people would be like, oh, okay, cool. That's, it started many, many years ago. We're 500 episodes into this thing, right?
We're very, very close. Yeah.
I can feel it.
Yo. Yeah, I was looking at that the other day. Like, I think I came in episode 170 something. We've done a lot of episodes. Like, y'all have done a lot of episodes.
Damn.
But yeah,
Really? It was
I
that
came
long
on
ago?
episode 176.
And the views have been
Been
right
going down
to the
ever
flow.
since. That's just
How about Nsima? How about we vote him in as a model for Dixxon?
Hey,
Maybe that could be the collab. Like we make,
Oh, we got to throw him in.
yeah, well, sure.
my mind is just so childish that it just went to like the lowest hanging fruit when you said model for dicks, and it's just like it just went.
Oh,
somewhere.
of course you're not going to have any pants on. I mean, obviously.
Dick.
I'm
What do you
such a
think this
kid,
little
bro.
cleaner's for? Hey, how about you make a Dixxon shirt that has a dick pouch in it?
Yeah.
Why not, right?
Yeah, no, there's no issue with that. Let's see, how would that work?
But
could work.
here's the catch:
Uh-oh.
only purchase it if you're hung like a horse. So
Right.
8 inches or longer. Every guy would be like, "That's me." Finally, they made a fucking shirt that's gonna help me with my junk. They must have been thinking of me when they made this.
Right.
Obviously.
Obviously.
Shit.
Finally, something that fits.
This is such a great idea though. Like this sunglass thing, like they really be doing the most over there. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It's fucking awesome. It is great.
Mhm.
It's fucking cool. He's got some shit figured out. Yeah, mastering of the mind. I wrote that down because I was like, he mentioned that so early on, and I think that's huge. And then the stuff he said about his children, I'm in 100% agreement with it. The kids are really tough, but we need to have my pops on the podcast. I know we've had him on before, but he's doing some really incredible stuff with my son, Jake. And Jake, it's been really cool to watch him come to his own conclusions on what he wants to do. I showed him how to work out, like very specifically. Like there was a day where I showed him and his sister how to work out in our garage and just said, hey, you know what? This is my life. Fitness is my life. And this is what I do. And this is sort of how it works. And just showed him some basic stuff, showed him a curl, showed him how to keep their back flat. And I'm like, I don't know how to do anything else. So I'm not going to teach you how to fix your car because I don't know anything about it. This is what I know how to do. And if you ever care to learn more from me, I'll share it all day long. I know about nutrition. And so anyway, I showed them that, and Jake expressed a little bit of interest with lifting, and he lifted a couple times. And, once I asked him to come to the gym with me, and he was like, nah, I'm good. I don't really, like it that much. And now he works out with his friends, maybe about once a week, once every other week. It's not super frequent. But he enjoys it when he enjoys it. It's nothing that I push, but all of a sudden he starts, playing the guitar. He comes to his own conclusion, his own way. His grandmother gave him a guitar. He didn't touch it for a while, and just something drew him to it at one point, and he just started playing it. And there's been a bunch of other things like that and my dad is really good at kind of towing that line into kind of like nudging you to do something. And my dad has my son doing taxes, and my son's making like $100 a day doing taxes for my dad.
Shit.
And he's learned it really well. He's picked it up really well. He understands the program.
Wow.
And my dad was real simple with him. My dad has him do a lot of other work. He has him like hanging up the American flag and just making hanging pictures at the office and just doing shit like that. And Jake is way into all these different things. And so my dad at one point's like, hey, it'd be cool if you learned how to do taxes. He's like, who knows? Maybe you could take the business. He's like, I'm, getting old, maybe you can take it over someday. And Jake's like, he's like, well, what would that be like? And my dad's like, well, if you were efficient at it, you would have a job that gives you about $200K a year. Jake's like, oh, shit. Okay. He's like, that doesn't sound bad. My dad's like, you got to get a license, and there's, some other things involved, and maybe it's not something that you like. And he's like, if it's not something that you like, maybe you can run it, inherit it, and have other people run it. And you can do a couple a week or something, you know what I mean? And it's just kind of popped these ideas in his head. And my dad's like, well, these are skills that you need to know anyway, because you're going to have to learn how to do taxes. You're going to have to learn about taxes, period. And here's the way it works. And, sure enough, Jake is sitting there, filing taxes. So it's really, really interesting in trying to do stuff with your kids. You could really force them a specific way and have them kind of be mini versions of you, or you can expose them to a bunch of stuff and let them be themselves, which will probably in the long run it would probably last longer if they're themselves. You watch the Tiger documentary, and I'm sure it seemed like Tiger Woods just didn't have a childhood, although some of his relationship with his dad actually seemed really cool. And it was amazing his dad spent that much time with him. But you also get a sense of like, that seemed his dad was right. I mean, his dad knew that his son was kind of the chosen one in a way, but he also kind of handcrafted him. And who knows what, Tiger Woods would just be a regular person if his dad he wouldn't have played golf probably at all. I don't know. Maybe. It's interesting. It's interesting to to see the making of somebody. You got Kobe Bryant, similar. His dad was a basketball player, and I think his dad played in Italy and stuff like that. And Kobe was playing at a really young age. Tiger was sort of pushed in a certain direction. Then you have the opposite of like Shaquille O'Neal, whose dad walked out, didn't want to, take any responsibility for his children, and it's like, but that made Shaq too, right? Like, and it gets to be confusing. You're like, what are you supposed to do with a kid?
Dude, I think that's a really tough thing, because I look back at it when I was given the choice after playing instruments for a few years, when I was given the choice, you don't have to anymore if you don't want to. I was like 12. I was like, this is nerdy. It's stupid. I was really good, but I was like, I don't want to. Right. I stopped. And then as an adult, I'm just like, damn, I wish you forced me to continue doing at least one of these, because I would really enjoy still being as good as I was then, right? And starting again now, and I'm a fucking beginner. It's kind of sucks.
Yeah, you're fucked as a parent, because there's a lot of kids that say that. Like, I wish my parents would have forced me to eat better when I was a kid. And then there's some kids that are like, my parents were so damn strict with nutrition. The second I left the house, I started eating cupcakes.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So what do you do?
Yeah, I remember.
That's a difficult one.
I remember like just getting out of school, being like, I don't know, just no real person, but like, this person's like a weirdo. It's like, oh yeah, his parents didn't let him have soda when he grew up. That was like a thing, like, oh, did your parents let you have soda? Like, I don't know. It's just, I think about that every day now,
I think there's different ways of doing it. You present a child with information.
Right.
Sometimes they're not quite old enough to make a decision. So before the age of 7 or 8, you should probably make most of the decisions for them. Can I have a cupcake with lunch? No, you had a huge breakfast, you had a pancake, you know what I mean? Like, you kind of keep track for them, as they get a little older. Maybe explanation would really help, and you explain why. Like my nephew Hamish, he wants to have an Instagram, and I said, and he's like, I'm not allowed to have Instagram. He's like, it really sucks. And I think he's like 8. I was like, did anybody ever explain to you why you can't have Instagram? He's like, no. And I said, okay, well, it's not to leave you out. Like, no one's trying to leave you out of this social media world. They just, because of your age, they want you to mainly communicate with people in person. There's some harmful, weird, wicked people, weirdo people on the internet that do inappropriate stuff with children. And his eyes were like, kind of lighting up. Like, I might have started to give him a little too much information. And his eyes are kind of lighting up. And I said, so people would rather have you communicate with your buddies and with other people in person. It's not to prevent you from communicating with your friends and taking a funny selfie to your buddies. It would be more preferred that if you did that, you just, maybe did it through your mom's phone or something like that, or because he didn't have a phone either. But, once I explained it to him, he was like, oh, okay. And he like walked away.
That's amazing.
It's like, maybe just sometimes kids just need, hey, I would prefer that you don't have soda, because when you drink a 20-ounce thing of Pepsi, it has nearly 70 grams of sugar. and it's not very healthy. It could lead to tooth decay. It could lead, maybe explain, hey, Uncle so-and-so, like he's 400 pounds because he drinks a lot of soda and overeats all the, there's usually references that are close by,
That's great though. Because, my daughter wants an Instagram account also. And I said some of the things the way you put it, but yeah, just that's huge.
Well, and then you can say to her too, like, hey, you know what? Come back to me. Let's talk about it every couple weeks or months. And you come back to me with a nice explanation of why you should have Instagram or how you can have it in a way that where you're still safe. It's a private account and you're going to promise that you're not going to, have it not be a private account. And I don't want to have to check through your stuff, but you're going to be good with keeping it a private. Like, are we sure, you're going to do all these things and, maybe not have your phone in your room at night or just whatever rules you can come up with.
Yeah.
And if your daughter's smart and she's plenty old enough to where she could, understand. I've had to fight with my daughter many times with her putting her phone away at night. And I asked her, like, what's a reasonable hour, for her to put it away? And she's like 12. And I'm like, how about 10, And so, we settle on what we settle on. I'm sure she puts it away. I'm in bed, so I don't even know.
Yeah.
It's there on the counter every morning, but it's taken a lot of reminders.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to like go in her room the other day and say, hey, I'm not trying to make a lot of rules for you. I'm not trying to block you from having fun with your friends. You can have the phone the entire day. I don't dictate how long you can be on your phone for. But there's a couple requirements that you have with this family, just like there's requirements I have. There's requirements that your mother has. There's requirements that Jake has with his family. And like one thing that I really want to make sure you do is that you put your phone away at around 10 o'clock every night and put it on a charger. It's out of your room, because then the next day you wake up very late or you have a hard time waking up for school. And I said, this is the definition of an addiction. And I can point to family members, say, hey, your uncle died from addiction because this thing got a hold of him stronger than what he was able to handle. And he's no longer here anymore. My mother basically died of addiction as well. My uncle died of addiction also. There's family references to where I can say, and obviously that's extreme because it's just talking about her being on her phone for a little bit too long, but it's bleeding into the next day and it's stressing your mother out more because she's yelling at you to wake up and you're not getting up, but it all just has to be, it's all centered around your phone. Mm. And so the most recent time that I brought it up to her, she saw the correlation herself and felt it because she wouldn't wake up until like 2 o'clock, 2 p.m., in the afternoon. And so once she started to experience it herself and realize like, oh, like I can't function, and I'm up later than even what I would like to do. Now she sees it and feels it. Now she understands my point and understands my explanation. And so, for a lot of kids are going to have to like actually have something happen or feel something in order for them to be compelled to really change, no matter how many times you mention it,
Yeah. There's this guy, Chris Johnson, and he reminded me of Danny, because Chris he's an entrepreneur in Sacramento, and he actually was on Shark Tank for an instant ramen maker or something like that. I forgot what it was called or what exactly it is, but he was saying that he had to have a conversation with his 2 young kids and his wife, and he had to explain, hey, daddy's going to be working really, really hard for the next 6 months because everything has to be prepared and pure and great for Shark Tank. You're not going to see me as much. I'm going to be spending very little amounts of time with you, but when we do, we're going to make it meaningful. So that's what he did. He didn't get to spend much time with his kids for months on end, but he communicated that with them. And when he did have his 30 minutes or whatever that he could really do it, he made it as meaningful as he possibly could. So I think that all just goes back to the idea of like, kids aren't stupid. Like they might be young, but like the example you gave with Hamish, right? Like you had to talk about a very weird subject with him, and he kind of understood it. If you can communicate these things, it might just be easier than just kind of fleshing through it and doing what you got to do and ignoring the fact and thinking that they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and when that topic comes back up again, in the case of the guy that you're talking about that was on Shark Tank, when he goes to his was it, you said daughter?
Yeah, that's him. That's him.
Yeah. So when he goes to his daughter and says, "Hey, we're going, I'm taking you, to get ice cream or whatever, or I'm taking you to the grocery store," the kid's not complaining because the kid remembered that you said, "Hey, we're not going to always be able to spend that much time together." And maybe this guy is like, "I have to go to the grocery store. The kid hasn't been out of the house all day. This would be a good time to sneak in a drive, maybe end up chatting about something for a few minutes. And maybe it's not their favorite thing to go to the grocery store, but at least we're fucking hanging out, for 20 minutes or whatever it is."
Yeah.
That's dope. Rapid ramen cooker and Rapid Mac.
Sick. He's right here in Sacramento.
Right here in Sacramento. Like, yeah, we did like this series thing, and my buddy Brian, who I do the other thing with, he got in contact with him, and we had him on. He is a really dope speaker.
Awesome.
He is. So like, yeah, you could have him on sometime too.
That would be spectacular.
Yeah. Okay.
Andrew, take us on out of here, buddy.
I will. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. Sincerely appreciate it. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're on iTunes, go ahead and drop a rating and a review if you can. That would be super beneficial, and that really helps us out. So, yeah, if you guys do, thank you. Please follow the podcast at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on Twitter. My Instagram, Twitter, and Clubhouse is at I am Andrew Z. And we got more Clubhouse stuff coming out very soon. That's going to be freaking awesome. And also, I know you guys just got to get invites from somebody that you know. It's really hard for me to send those out. But
selling them for $1,000 a piece.
I know, right? Like,
you can cash at me $1,000 and you will get that Clubhouse invite.
That's all it takes. Easily, yeah. Venmo or whatever, cryptocurrency, whatever it takes. Nsima, where are you at?
And Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube and Clubhouse. And Nsima Inyang on Twitter, Mark.
I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.